Hello! Welcome to, what are we calling these? Britannis Rules Review live streams. Yes. So welcome to yet another Britannis Rules Review live stream. The appropriate rules location are listed in the title of this. And I'm Caroline, and this is Jason.
Hello!
And we're the directors. And today Stephanie is going to be presenting to you. So I'm going to turn the camera to Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm your friendly game liaison, and I am going over packet attacks and what we look for when we do our weapons inspections. So, 5.4, packet attacks. You call a verbal and throw a packet at a target to deliver attack. Now, just so we're clear, when we talk about a packet, this is what we mean. 76 by death.
Oh God!
So good.
I'm magic. Thank you. If the packet hits the target, or any direct possession of the target, then the effect is delivered to the target. So if I hit, you're gonna make me look so bad here. If I hit Jason's beer, which I did not,
Hypothetically, she hit the beer.
and I have a packet, then it would take an effect.
Oh, my beer!
And I'm dead.
Because you still have to verbally announce, hey, this packet thing hit me, and I acknowledge that, so I have to acknowledge that the packet hit me.
LARPing out loud is important. Packet props used with packet attacks are not solid objects and cannot be affected by disarm or destroy, but they are a visible in-game effect. So let's say Jason and I are fighting, and Jason says disarm, and well, sorry honey, I've got a packet that's not affected by that.
Can't disarm my magic.
If someone is carrying packets and you see the packets, you can assume they have some sort of aura that makes you realize they are capable of something special. Because of this, you cannot carry or throw packets unless you have the power to use them for something. So Layla, my NPC, is not a hero. She has no magic, so Layla does not carry packets. If a packet clearly strikes the target and they do not acknowledge the hit with roleplay, or by negating it with a defense, I hit that time.
Y'all are enjoying this way too much.
Yes, we are.
Note, I did not say anything along the lines of, ah, or ah, my beer, or anything like that.
Therefore, the attributes or their equivalent are not exhausted. It's the same thing when you don't acknowledge a hit with a weapon. If they do not acknowledge the hit, you do not spend the effect.
Clarification. If she does her thing and she flat out misses, however, the attributes, abilities, or whatever that she expended are spent.
Right, because I missed. If the packet misses, or you cannot tell whether the packet hit, then the attributes or resources are exhausted normally. 5.4.1, packet props. A packet prop is a small beanbag filled with birdseed that represents some sort of ranged attack. These are filled with probably dried pinto beans or something like that. That's good too. What we're really kind of looking for is something that, if it gets left in the field, it's not going to terribly damage the environment. So, natural fabrics, birdseed, beans, perfect.
No sunflower seeds.
Why not?
Because they're fucking pointy.
Oh.
We don't want to take a
Safety
spell
issue.
packet to the eye.
Yeah,
So,
because it's like getting hit with a spiked ball.
We don't want that.
Right.
packets are used to represent a large range of supernatural, psychic, and super science attacks, such as spells, mental bolts, elemental attacks, and many special monster abilities. In some games, packets are also used to represent the ammunition launched by missile weapons, such as arrows or bolts. Here's where it gets interesting. Packet props must be at least 4 inches square, big enough to fill the palm of most people's hands completely. I have tiny hands. Caroline has tiny hands. Mike Monty does not have tiny hands.
Almost fills.
So we try to go for at least the size of your hand, but since some of us have abnormally small fingers and hands, at least 4 inches square on a side. If your packets have already been approved, you are okay.
On the flip side of that, if you're one of those enormous humans who has, you know, a palm the size of my outstretched fingers, a packet the size of your palm is probably too freaking big.
We do not discriminate against you if you have Rachmaninoff hands. So, anyway, it has to be filled with a biodegradable material, except for sunflower seeds, and loosely filled enough that when squeezed in the middle, your fingers can touch. So these packets that I I was so graciously borrowed. It's about 4 inches on a side, and when I put my fingers around them, my fingers touch. It's floppy.
It's
So
through the
it's-
middle.
It's through the middle like this.
Yep.
Pinched.
See,
I
I'm
pinch.
incorrect.
I pinch.
And I can feel my fingers.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
What,
goes flat in the middle.
what that
Semi-flexible material greatly helps in this.
what that prevents, what the touching your fingers through the middle prevents, is somebody making well-meaning but entirely rigid packets that are so packed with material that they hit like rocks.
Yeah, like that would not work. 'Cause I,
Right,
I,
so
I
if it's-
physically
If
can't,
it's so tight that it does this,
you can't get your there.
that's not okay.
Bad.
And
Don't
again,
use bocce balls as spell packets.
However, there are some players who have some of the squishy koosh balls that light up that they use for their spell packets. Those are approvable at weapons check on a case-by-case basis. They are not guaranteed to pass. You want to make sure that they're going to be big enough that they're not going to go into somebody's eye. That's the idea. So if you pick some of those up, and they are super cool if you do, understand it's probably best to pick up one, bring it to a weapons check, or pass it through one of our weapons check staff. Make sure that it passes before you go back and buy an arm load.
So can you clarify about going into an eye? How big does it need to be?
Usually 2 inches or so will keep it from hitting most people's eye sockets.
I'm going to hit Tammy in the eye. This is not going to hit Tammy in the eye. If it's smaller than that, there's a good chance that not only will it be not available to put your fingers through, but that could hurt.
Retinas are cool. We want to keep them.
Yep.
So,
Word.
poor Leanne. Both packet attacks and missile attacks that use packets are thrown at the enemy with a free hand. Please don't try this nonsense. To deliver a packet or missile attack, the arm that is throwing the packet prop must be free, and the hand empty except for the packet prop itself. So, this is excellent. This is not excellent. I could accidentally throw my sword. A free arm cannot have props tucked under it or tied to it other than armor. You cannot throw a packet prop if the arm is affected by something that prevents its use, such as maim effect or shackles. You cannot throw packet props unless you have a game skill that allows you to do so.
Hold on a second. Give me your sword. And
That one doesn't pass, by the way. We'll talk about that later.
It's fine. So there's a couple people in game who have weapons that have a keeper string that attaches to their wrist, so that if they get disarmed or whatever, they just drop it and they can yank it back. Cool, good for you. However, that rule that Stephanie just wrote specifically prevents you from throwing packets with that hand. So let's pretend that this has a string that attaches it to my wrist. I cannot drop it, throw a packet, and then yank that thing back to my hand and continue to use it. What I have to do is have that in the hand that is not throwing packets. So if you're going to use a weapon keeper, string, cord, chain, whatever, it cannot throw packets with that hand. Period.
You should not throw packets too hard. Your packet throws should not be hard enough to sting. If you are winding up to throw the packet, then you are probably throwing too hard. I know we have some players who play baseball. Please don't try to throw 90-mile-an-hour fast packets. That's not okay.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick. Packet props cannot be used while you are being hit. Successful melee attacks interrupt your ability to throw packet props, forcing you to wait 1 full second before attempting to throw again. You are not allowed to throw packet props during the flurry pause of an attacker who just hit you. Missile and packet attacks will also interrupt your verbal if they land while you are speaking it, but you may begin a new verbal immediately and do not have to wait for 1 second in those cases. An interrupted ability is not used up, and attributes or their equivalent are not wasted, but you must begin the verbal again. So you don't get to start in the middle of your interrupted spell. You have to start at the beginning of the interrupted spell.
Hold on, let me clarify here. The rule specifically applies to the verbal of a spell, meaning the out-of-game words you speak to tell someone what the effect is. An incantation is entirely different from the spells or from the verbal of an ability. For example, if my verbal incantation for a spell is humana 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 lobster, and then I throw my packet for 5 by lobster, if someone hits me in the humana 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 lobster portion, that will disrupt my spell, per the spell rules as written. However, if somebody hits me during the 5 damage by lobster portion, all I have to do is restart that portion over again. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Some creatures may have the ability to throw packet props even while they are being hit. They will indicate this by saying "focused" before the before the attack verbal when they make the attack. Have we used focused?
Nope, we don't use it because it's confusing.
I was going to say that doesn't seem terribly lovely.
Nope.
Okay.
So creatures could use that in theory. We
If
haven't.
we use that skill.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, 5.4.2, missile or packet.
Wait. Do we want to pause and address the questions that have come so far?
Do we want to? I'm almost done with the packet part of this.
Let's
Okay.
go ahead and go through the packet portion and then go back to
And
questions.
then we'll go back for questions.
Yep.
So go ahead and post your questions about packet attacks now, so that we can address them right in line.
And then we'll address the packet. We'll do the packet part, address questions, and then go to the weapons check part.
Sure.
So, for games that use packet props to represent missile attacks, how does the player determine whether the incoming attack is a missile weapon or a packet attack? So, to answer that question, that's a lovely question. Any packet thrown while the attacker is holding a missile launcher prop is automatically considered a missile attack, while any packet thrown without this prop is considered a packet attack. I know in the Nero system they had a rule about using packet bows, so I had a bow with one hand and my arrows were represented by packets with the other hand. If we use that system,
Which we do.
then that would be counted as a missile attack. If I don't have my bow fizz rep, then it's just considered a packet attack.
Hold on a second. So there's one addendum to that. We in Britannis designate that if you have a packet missile weapon system, meaning you are using a bow to represent your arrows or a crossbow to represent your arrows, your packets for those attacks must be white in color primarily, which makes it even easier for somebody who's on the receiving end of your barrage of packets to understand that they're being hit with arrows instead of spells or alchemy items or whatever. In addition, blaze orange packets are considered to be alchemy items only. So those are the only 2 restricted colors for players to choose for their packets. Blaze orange always represents alchemy, and white always represents a missile weapon attack, either a bow arrow fired or a crossbow bolt fired.
Don't we use orange for Monster Camp as well?
No, it should be just alchemy.
Okay.
So, when packet props are used as missile ammunition, the attacker must always have an obvious missile launcher prop, such as a bow and a crossbow in one hand, while holding the missile launcher prop in the other. The player would have to put down the missile launcher before making a packet attack. So if I were an archer and a magic user, I could have my bow fizz wrap in one hand, throw my missiles with my other hand. But if I wanted to change to magic, put my bow down, put it over my shoulder, however I choose to do that, and then I could use my not white packets to cast spells. Thrown weapons are never represented by packet props. This is not a throwing dagger. This is a packet. Throwing daggers are throwing daggers.
Oh, I was going to ask, what about the packet launching arrows? The ones you actually draw back and launch with.
We haven't had any of those come into game yet. If we do, we'll vet them individually. I have it on very good authority that the B3 Imagination packet throwing bows are redonkulously amazing, and they would still need white packets to represent their arrows.
Understood.
Okay, final thing on the packet attack. 5.5 Rules of Etiquette. Costume. In order to encourage the use of good costuming, as we do, and add a little more realism, we have the costume rule. If a packet attack clearly misses a target and passes by the body, yet that packet hits a cloak or costuming piece after it has gone past, the defender can call out costume. This rule cannot be used if the costuming is in front of the defender or if the packet has not already passed the body. The rule is in place to encourage cloaks, back banners, and some directed character costuming, such as wings, without adding an unacceptable disadvantage to the character in combat. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay. And that call is always on the defender to make. If somebody makes that call, even if you don't think that it has passed completely past them, just move on with the fight. It is treated as if the attack is not expended in the first place, so you're not using up any resources because of it. So you're not going to lose your spell because they call costume. It's designed for the fun of the person wearing the costume, and eventually you might be the person wearing a costume that you're going to be calling costume for a lot of things on. So just let the defender make the call and move on with the fight. Don't be a dick.
I'm done. So if we want to start taking some questions on the packet attack, we probably should do that now.
What we got?
Lewis, if you can restate your question, I'll read as he wrote it. It may make more sense. He said successful melee attacks mean causes an effect to you, damage, status effect. If a weapon hits a shield, is the spellcaster good? Tracking that, or we need more clarification?
Lewis, I think we'll need you to be more specific on that one as to what you're actually asking there.
Okay, and then Jeremiah said, wait, I could have sworn we had someone use packets for rocks before. Was that incorrect?
If they have been using that, I'm not tracking it, and or they were using it incorrectly.
But that would be a missile attack.
It would be meaning they would need the physical prop for the missile weapon, like a thrown weapon, not like a fired bow, a fired arrow, or a fired crossbow bolt.
But could they use a white packet to represent a rock? Do we have stats for rocks?
No, no, they couldn't because it would fall under thrown weapons and not missile weapons.
Okay.
Missile weapons would be a device that launches a projectile, whereas thrown weapons would be a spear, hand axe, throwing hammer, or rock that would need the physical prop that looks like that item.
So if we wanted to have, excuse me, Joanna, if we wanted to have a trebuchet, the trebuchet would launch white packets. Yes?
Maybe. That might be a special scenario, but
Giant pieces of foam that look like a rock.
in which case they would probably be white anyway to cover that, yeah.
No, but okay.
Which
Yeah.
just basically means that Chris Lydon needs to get on building his trebuchet. Just
Yes, do it.
Okay, a little bit more about the rock thing. It was Kemry who used it, and Bruce added it was used during the fighting challenge the Doomnoni ran last year. Does that spark any memories?
we just need to make sure if it happens again, it follows the rules correctly. That's all.
And Lewis came back looking for clarification on the effect of a successful melee attack on someone casting. What is a successful melee attack? For example, if Shirak is casting and blocks with his shield, is he still good to continue with the spell?
Oh, that's a really excellent question. So,
Wait, is this considered a basic question or an advanced question? Are there other questions we should answer before?
this would be a basic question because it addresses specifically what she's talking about.
Great.
As far as what disrupts a verbal and what does not, a blocked attack with a shield would not qualify because it doesn't actually apply a game effect to the target. Even an uncalled attack, just a basic weapon strike, causes an effect to hit the target. And
One damage.
right. So either a successful attack that deals damage or any other effect to a target, or an attack that is dealt to a target that they successfully use a defense for, a parry, shield, avoid, whatever that we've gone over in previous.
So in this case, would it be homina, block, homina, lobster?
Probably, yeah. That would be up to the defender in that case. It might be something like homina, ouch, defend or avoid by weasels,
Lobster.
and lobster, and then continue on with that. The important part is that a blocked attack that does not actually affect the target, as if one that you successfully avoid with a shield, would not affect a spell verbal, whereas an effect that you actually take and have to do some kind of in-game reaction to, whether that be LARPing out loud by taking the attack or using a game defense, would interrupt the verbal. That's a really excellent question.
Can we do an example that's just one damage, no fancy calls, no nothing, just...
Sure. So,
the arcane forces strike.
You wanna?
yeah, so Mike is...
Bozart's got this one.
Bozart's got this one. So Mike is getting ready to use he gets through his incantation,
By the arcane forces strike.
and in the meantime, as he begins his verbal, which is the attack...
One damage by magic. Oh, dang it.
Right. So because I successfully hit him and dealt damage to him, he had to restart that verbal. If I hit him during the incantation portion,
By the arcane forces. Oh. By the arcane forces strike.
he has to start the whole thing over
Right.
instead of just the verbal portion over.
Yes.
But because the verbal portion is out of game, if you hit him during that, it's only that portion you have to repeat.
Elbow on.
Elbow on.
And let me clarify, when you are giving all of your incantations and spell effects, it must be legible. You can't 5 by damage. No.
Audible, not legible. Legible is the
Clarification.
writing.
All of those things.
All of the
You
things.
need to make sure that you are clearly speaking what you are saying so that everybody knows what's going.
5
on.
by flams.
And if you don't, if you are the guy who is constantly murderizing his incantations and stuff, and do that again and hit me with a packet.
I was doing 5 by damage!
Clarification?
By the power of Grayskull, 5 by damage!
I'm a wiener! Ow!
Red.
Really?
That was not okay.
Red. Red.
I'm sorry, I did not mean to hurt you.
Okay.
Don't aim there.
I have a question.
Great.
Or there.
I have several questions.
A number of spells with the specific keywords require you to plant your right foot when you're saying them.
Mhm.
So would a successful attack include one that causes you to move that foot?
No, it just has to contact you and affect you. It's one of the downsides of those kind of spells is that it makes you more liable to be repeating those things over again because you're a stationary target.
Okay.
Good question.
Annie, you said you had a question?
Oh no, just generally about
Okay.
the status of our group right now.
Lobsters and weasels.
I've been looking for some lobsters all night long.
The
All right.
power of
All right.
Grayskull.
What else we got, Megan?
Jeremiah commented, so having a relic item shield is extra useful then, as you don't have to drop the shield.
Yes, it is. That is, in fact, exactly what that's useful for.
So that's an advanced question to
That would be.
clarify.
Yes. In the signature items section, there is an ability that allows a weapon or shield to be considered able to be held while casting. And it's super useful for those kind of things because it specifically lets you loophole that section of the rules and keep it in your hand while casting.
Okay.
There's a similar thing for staves, but I will tell you, in practicality, you wind up holding the staff in one hand and casting with the other. Otherwise, you're really
Right.
not doing much.
There are several abilities in various places in the rules that allow you to loophole that particular rule, but it specifically tells you that you have the ability to do something against the rules as the core rules as written.
Anything else?
So, what?
I want to clarify. I think Jeremiah was making a joke, but he said, so no throwing pancakes is what you're saying. And if that isn't actually a joke about throwing pancakes, if you make your packet too thin,
Like a frisbee.
then it moves like a frisbee, and that is also frowned upon.
Not
So.
okay.
I don't know that I could.
So
throw
in
a
other
full
words,
packet
Oh, it's
that
totally
way.
doable.
oh, you,
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Zinger.
As I
you
say,
can
and I
totally
do
do
it.
it.
Yeah. However, it is
No flying
vastly
pancakes.
less accurate than throwing it overhand.
Right.
Right.
That
And
nearly was in an eye. Careful.
Red.
I will say, at a previous game that I played at, there was a woman who is a collegiate level softball pitcher. Don't do it. It doesn't matter if you're winding up or if you're winding up down. Don't do the wind up before throwing your packets.
That is not a softball.
It's not a softball.
It
It's
is
not
not
a
a
baseball. It's a beanbag.
Ah.
From a practical standpoint, that also involves range.
Yeah.
And in reality, anything beyond about 20 feet is really impractical to try to throw at.
Yep.
It's not reasonable because I've considered it. I mean, I'm going to sit back here and, they're about 45 feet away and I'm going to,
Bruce can do it. Bruce has done it. It can also hurt.
It can really hurt.
The other real issue with trying to arc throw a packet is that by the time it lands on your target, you've already finished the verbal as to what the effect does. So there's almost always, in an arced packet throw, the throw 5 by fire, thwap. Clarification, what was that? Because you finished your verbal before the person knows they've been hit. Almost every single time. It's impractical.
Jeremiah says, partially yes, partially no. Frisbee / pancake packets are doable but not controllable. So that's basically what we're
Right.
saying.
Now,
Yes,
on
that
the flip
we-
side
we
of that,
interpreted well.
going over what Stephanie had mentioned earlier, on the flip side of that, if you were to make foam pancake props, technically, if you have the throwing weapon skill, you could use them like shuriken. Dawn. So technically, if you made a throwing weapon prop that looked like a pancake, you could throw it like a frisbee and it would have game effect.
And Bruce apologizes again to Joanna for hitting her with the pack.
All right.
Don't
so
try to
I
hit my
think that.
kid, we're good.
So are we good on questions for that section? All right. Let's move on to the next section.
Okay.
Next section.
So, we are going to talk about what we look for when we check weapons. So, I have 2 weapons here that we'll talk about later, but one passes,
Stephanie,
the other
I'm
one
gonna
does
interrupt you
not.
because Joanna just brought up a really good thing, a really good addendum to your previous section. Say that again.
Okay. The one other use for a packet that is not an attack is if you ask hands-on.
Hands off.
That is an acceptable option because I'm not actually touching it. It's why they have to be that size.
There are many, many touch-based abilities in the game. If you have the touch-based abilities and want to use it on a player, and they do not have, and you do not have hands-on permission for them, the packet is an acceptable in-game alternative to that, and you always have the ability to say no effect to a beneficial effect from an ally. So if she's trying to heal me and for some strange reason I don't want to be healed right now, I can say no effect because she is an ally.
Can we do that for a grant? If I've already got a beneficial grant
Does
on
it-
me and I don't want to take whatever you're going to give me?
Exactly.
Okay.
We're getting off into the weeds.
Yep,
Yeah,
sorry.
Let's go
but
back to
that's
focus.
true. That's the other purpose that a packet can have.
Correct. And if you don't explicitly have hands-on for a target, that is your default. If you have not asked, regardless of whether somebody says hands-on or hands-off, if you haven't asked them, that's the default.
You should always ask.
Yep.
Are we done now? Can I go back?
Yep.
Okay. Safety check. So I have 2 weapons, one that does not pass and one that does pass. So one of the things that we are looking for when we are checking your weapons before the start of every game is safety check will be performed by appropriate members of the game staff. We will sometimes deputize people to do this. Just know that they're checking your weapons. There should be a member of staff there doing that with you. Except for the grip surface, no more than 1/3 of the length of the weapon. The small weapons should have no more than 6 inches of grip surface, no obvious breaks, no unexpectedly loose parts, and no cracks in the foam. That's one of the things that we're looking for. We will apply a little flex at various points along the core, but there should not be enough flex past 30 degrees. So we're looking about 2 inches of give. There's not a whole lot of give to this weapon. It's a little bit more give to this weapon. We're going to check the hilt area to confirm no physical damage. This has got a little bit of physical damage. This may or may not pass, depending on if there's ample foam around the core. So you'll see us squeezing your weapon. Sounds like this should be a euphemism. The striking surface should be fairly safe, so we'll confirm there's ample foam around the core. If an eye can be scooped out, it is wrong. So no melon baller ends on your weapons, please. And no cord or rigid protrusions above the grip. Those of you who have spiky weapons, you will see members of the game approved staff will flex we'll hit them and make sure that they're not going to go into someone's eye.
We will pinch your spikes.
We would pinch your spikes. Thrown weapons should always be coreless. We will check for the little bit of flex on that.
Addendum. There are semi-rigid cores that are okay to be used inside of thrown weapons. What we're talking specifically here about is rigid cores like PVC pipe, fiberglass rod, fiberglass tube, anything
Carbon.
like that.
Yeah.
Carbon fiber, anything. The only core acceptable for a thrown weapon is something like a hot glue stick or a piece of rubber tubing or something.
Something like that.
Something that has some structure to it, but is mostly flexible. Again, thrown weapons are a case-by-case basis.
This is not a thrown weapon. It's small. It's got a core. If I throw this, I could hurt somebody. For ranged weapons, and we have a couple of archers out there, your ranged weapon should be presented unstrung. We have a max 30-pound draw strength at a 28-inch draw. No compound-style bows, and each individual flight will be checked. Easy for me to say. The weapons inspector has the final say for passing a safety check, and appeals can be made between events. So if we tell you no, I'm sorry. Weapons rules are deliberately vague to allow for interpretation, and we as staff will help you find a temporary fix for weapons that don't pass. So you come into game, you have weapons you think are okay, you'll bring them, we look at you and say, sorry, it's too or not enough, whatever. We will help you play. We want you to come here. We don't have a game without players.
We're not going to send you away.
We're heaven,
We're
heavens
not
no.
going
We
to
will
send
find
you
some
away.
way to make sure you can play.
Correct.
So the Britannia specific errata is the rules for weapons are divided by type. So if you're looking for what types of weapons that you can make, you can just go look at the type of weapon you want. You don't have to memorize the whole thing. We mentioned the packets should be at least 4 inches square. And the weapons rules that we use at Britannis are specific to Britannis. They are not part of the Accelerant rules set. So I don't know that our weapons will be allowed at every single Accelerant game.
The Accelerant community, camera over here, baby.
Super pretty.
The Accelerant community on the East Coast have a whole different weapons paradigm than we do, but because the weapons system, the weapons rules are separate from the Accelerant core rules, we can make our own calls on what passes and what doesn't. Pretty much everything that they make would of course pass here, but we allow some weapons and types of weapons that they don't. So our weapons rules are specific to our game.
So I just got a question. I don't have a weapon. Can I just borrow a game weapon? I think the answer to that is no. And
Ask around first.
Yes, one of the reasons that we promote our house system and our community within the game is that if you're coming to, say, your first event and you don't have time or ability to get or make a weapon before your first event, the most lead time you can give us to help figure out a solution is ideal. The day before the event, probably not going to happen. 2-3 weeks before an event, we're probably going to be able to figure out a solution for you. Ultimately, your own weapons and props are your own personal responsibility. But if you're coming out to your first event, let us know ahead of time, and we can try and help you figure something out. This is one of the scenarios. If you don't feel like you have the props available to play as a hero, this is one of the situations where coming and playing as Team Monster would be super ideal, because you can get hands-on experience with what weapons we play with and like and enjoy and pass. And then for your next event that comes down the pike, you can have all your perfect weapons and setup and kit and all that ready.
And this is why you come talk to your friendly game liaison before you come out, because I can offer you the option to play Team Monster for your first event, and you don't have to spend, however much a nice latex weapons cost, or even if a more moderately priced homemade boffer.
Would it be safe to say that we anticipate and try to be as helpful as we possibly can, but that if we don't have enough time in order to react to a request, we have finite resources as well, and so we can't necessarily grant that request.
Absolutely.
Right. One of our players, Bruce, actually just commented that they've lent theirs out to new players 3 times. Many players have. We have your back to have fun.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely true.
The
So
key-
this is not a thing to be afraid of
That's
asking
already
around
No,
for.
not at all. The key factor to understand is that the most time you can give us to help react, the better off your scenario is going to end up being.
This,
There's one specific thing I want to say in regards to the weapons checking rules.
before you say that,
Sure.
let me. This is I'm so close. Everyone else is so far away. This is also true. I've also heard players, veteran players and newer players saying, hey, I normally fight with this kind of weapon. Is there anybody who has a fill in the blank that I could borrow at this next event? Because I'd really like to give it a try. And if you have the weapon skill available, you can do that in game. And if not, then you've just got somebody on the sidelines that you can say, hey, how does a spear work? So please use each other as a resource in that way to expand your skill set.
Your shovel, please. So, we accept many different weapons manufacturers at Britannis, and because of that, everything that comes through the weapons check is a case-by-case basis. That's one of the specific reasons that our weapons rules are written the way they are, is so that the weapons checking personnel have the ability to make a judgment call on the field. One of the things that we have noticed, let me step back. One of the manufacturers that many of our players use is Calimacil, C-A-L-I-M-A-C-I-L. They make amazing swords and axes and maces. One of the things that they have not really mastered
One of the
yet.
qualities of that weapon.
Well, one of the things they haven't really mastered yet is the long staff. This being a perfect example. The density of the foam in this particular weapon style, meaning the wooden, narrow polearm type weapon, has been kind of spotty. And because of that, we do not recommend that players choose weapons with this particular profile. Stephanie got really lucky in that all of the density on this foam all the way down is pretty uniform, but a couple of the others that have been purchased by players have not been so and have been turned down by weapons checkers. In particular for staff type weapons, it is super important for you as a player to understand who you're buying from and the quality of the weapon. Like I said, Stephanie got lucky on this one because the whole density of the foam all the way down here is pretty uniform, and that hasn't been the case in a couple of the other weapons we've received. It is the player's responsibility to check their weapons to the best of their ability before they come onto the field. So if you order a weapon and it comes in from the manufacturer and you test it and it's got like a spot like this that's super dense and hard, don't bring it to the game and hope that it'll pass or that we'll miss it, because we're not gonna. Have the empowerment of yourself to send it back to the manufacturer and say, this thing's got a 6-inch spot that's hard as a rock. I don't think it's gonna pass my local game. Can I please get a replacement? That's on you. That's not on us, because we're gonna be checking by the same standards regardless of who the manufacturer is when the weapon arrives on site. Yeah, that's just, yeah.
Okay, so Tammy and I are going to check weapons. Tammy's going to check my shovel. And some of the things she's looking for, that being a flexible part is fantastic. You want something like that to be flexible. Go
No
ahead.
brakes. Good structure.
And for the record, Tammy is one of our weapons check marshals.
So am I in the case of an emergency.
Tammy, is that back end thrust okay or no?
It is squishy all the way through up to there. I would not feel comfortable with it being a thrusting tip, personally, because it's smaller than an eye socket. So, no, it is not thrusting tip. Good question, Mike.
Thank you.
You can, however, blap with this. And it wouldn't hurt anything.
How about the other end?
That you could thrust with, but remember, if it gets damaged, that will make it no longer usable in game.
That's one of the reasons why this is my NPC weapon.
I would absolutely pass this.
As would I. So this weapon is one that we've used in other LARPs. This is one of my oldest weapons. This one would not pass, and I will tell you why. It's got a huge crack right here. You see that at the base of the hilt there?
Mm-hmm.
And it's gotten so old, it's hard. That's about the size of an eye socket. That's not real nice. This would sting. Even though it's squishy, it would sting if you smack somebody with it. So I would not pass this. So that's one of the things, some of the things that we look for, and I wanted to show you something overtly that would not pass. So it's got a pretty good thrusting tip, but that would sting if you hit somebody with it. We are a light touch game. We aim not to bruise our players. Stuff happens, but we try to avoid red hits as much as we can. Are there any other questions?
Nothing has been posted.
Nothing's been posted. I like that answer. That means we're doing a good job.
And thank you, Spencer, for saying yay, Stephanie Game Liaison. That makes me happy.
We've got Megan's already put up a link to Calimacil. I think this is a fine place to continue to link other weapons. So if you
For the record, Calimacil makes incredible weapons that are super, super durable. In fact, I think the only weapons we have from Season 0 for NPC Camp that are still around are the Kalamazoo weapons. It's just that one particular weapon type that has had some issues that we've seen. Every other Kalamazoo weapon that has shown up on our field has passed with flying colors.
Amy, you had your hand up. Did you want something?
Oh, I just wanted to spit out a quick reminder. Many of you will bring extra weapons in case someone needs to borrow it, in case your weapon gets damaged or you decide that you want to switch weapons or something. Even if you bring it with no intention of it being used or don't anticipate it being used, if it is on the game site anywhere, it needs to go through weapon check.
Even in your car.
Even
Even if it stays in your car.
even if it stays in your car.
If they're going to keep it in their car, why does it need to go through the weapons check?
That's not a thing.
Because what we don't want is somebody running to their...
Color band.
Okay.
But that's not okay.
All right.
back?
It appears that we're back.
Annie's
We've
back.
lost.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hey,
It
we're
didn't
back.
have a band
We've
on
lost
it.
a bunch of people though. Hopefully they'll come back.
Tammy just brought up a really good point. Go ahead.
When it comes to weapons checks, at the time that it's approved, we will be putting a band on your weapon.
For example, this would be, at one point in time, this weapon was approved. It's got a colored band on it.
If it is on the field at any point in time and does not have the appropriate color for that event, that is a major issue. So please be aware, any weapon you bring out has to go through weapons check and has to have that band. If it gets damaged, find one of us and we will address it.
On the same subject of bans, when you come to your next event, please beforehand cut off the old band so that we don't waste weapons check time taking care of cutting off all the bands and rubber bands from the previous event. Saves us a ton of time. Thanks.
Megan totally just said what I was about to say. Cool.
But what that means is we're going to check them every event.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it passed the last
Nice.
one and it's only been 2 weeks.
Every
We're going to
weapon.
do it again.
Every time.
Every weapon,
Every
every time. It says it very clearly on the website. I think it's even got big red letters.
I'm going to take one step further, and it doesn't happen often, thankfully, but if you get into a battle and, boy, like swinging a certain spear of my wife's, and suddenly, wow, I wonder, let's get a check on that. Feel free to ask us for a recheck if you're worried about the safety of your own weapon. We're happy to do that. In my particular case, it still passed. Yay! But it doesn't necessarily mean that it will, and we can accommodate you at that point rather than having some unsafe weapon out if you're worried about it.
Right. The reason that we do every weapon every time is because as you use them, they get worn and things can change. The integrity of that weapon can change. That can also happen during an event. So it's totally valid, even if that weapon was just checked the day before. If you don't feel like it is maybe as structurally sound as it was yesterday, have it checked because maybe it's not. And
That's
it's better to be safe than to hurt someone.
I think we're real close to going off in the weeds here,
Yep.
so now's a good time to stop.
That's all.
All right.
Is that it, Miss
Yeah.
Stephanie?
That's all I've got.
All right. Any final questions about weapons check? About where to find information about where to find information about constructing your weapons, about weapons safety.
Don't hit people in the head on purpose. I know accidents happen. Please do not aim for people's heads.
Or groin,
Or groin.
Stephanie.
I said I was sorry.
Okay.
We're officially in the weeds.
We are waiting. I was just giving a pause to see if anybody else wants to ask a question. Nope. All right. Well, good night, Gracie. Good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.